If you're sick of feeling like side control is a complete waste of your time because your partner either just reguards or just glues their elbows to the ribs and you have no structured system of attacking your limbs from there, watch this video next. We're going to show you a myriad of different attacks that you can reliably use to frustrate your training partners and finally make side control one of your favorite positions.
The whole idea from this position is we want to expose his elbows off his body. And now if somebody knows what's up, they're going to glue their elbows towards their ribs. They're going to keep their hands nice and tight. And sometimes this is a very difficult endeavor to start to get underneath. But once you realize a couple of things, it's actually not that hard at all. So if you just persist trying to come up underneath the elbow by just lifting and pulling and straining, you're not really going to get all that much. You need to start to take a bit better of an angle. And so if I'm in side control, like proper, perpendicular across this side, this might be really difficult to start to get, and he can always pull his elbow back down to the floor. It's not a very robust grip. So what we want to start to think about is taking a perpendicular angle 45 degrees towards his hip so that I can start to wedge up underneath with my forearm, my wrist pointing towards my face, and then I can start to use my torso and my body weight to peel his shoulders off the mat. This does two things. It starts to get his elbow in a position that I can start to claim the inside spot between his forearm and his bicep, but it also allows me to use my weight rather than my muscular strength. So if I'm just lifting from here, this may work, but it's going to exhaust you in a short period of time. Versus if I start to roll him up using my body weight, he tries to put his body back down towards the floor. I'm not using any muscular tension at the moment, I'm just using weight here. So it's a really nice method. Once I get to this position, I'm going to start to put my wrist or the back of my wrist inside his forearm here. So now if he tries to bring his elbow back inside, it's actually quite difficult because at some point I've got to take my chest out from behind here and stop wedging him from behind him so I can get to my next position. If I don't put my hand in this position and cup his elbow with my elbow, yeah, sometimes you can run into problems here. So when you are about to elevate your chest, make sure that as you come up, you pull his elbow into your sternum. Otherwise, if there's a gap, he'll pull his elbow through the spot. Once I get to this position, I can link my figure 4, and now I've got my kimura grip, which I'm after, and I can start to either step up over the head, or I can sit back in this position, what we're calling a top head and arm, and start to look at back takes, triangles, and all the sorts of things we're going to look at today. One important detail when you get to this position is that you want to start to extend your wrists down and rotate over towards his chest. Reason being is that if I just lazily hold this here, he can start to reach up and strip the grip quite easily. And once he strips my wrist, the one that's only containing his wrist, he can actually start to pull his elbow down towards the floor, and I'm sitting on my butt now. I don't have any ability to wedge my chest behind him whatsoever. But if I extend and roll both my wrists forwards, it's actually a lot more difficult for him to strip this grip based on where it is and based on the robustness of the position. And now if he tries to, I'm going to be able to weave my legs into positions that I can start to attack from while he's worried about stripping that grip. Conversely, if I just had it in any old lazy position and I throw my legs over the top, he strips his arm, now he pulls his elbow down towards the floor and it kind of falls apart. So we're going to go, to begin, we're going to start to get into that position. We're in our normal side control. We haven't got upper body grips yet. He's done a good job at maintaining inside position. What we're going to do is we're going to take a perpendicular angle, or rather a 45-degree angle down towards his hip. And I'm going to start to expose this elbow by pulling my wrist towards my face, and then I'm using my chest to roll him up and over that 45 degrees. I'm not trying to roll him this way, I'm trying to roll him over this way so I can get a good shot at this elbow. Once I do, I can start to pull my hand towards my chest and then lock up my figure 4. Ordinarily, we could start to shin pin his bicep. We can start to go into kimura series from here, but we're going to look at some arm bars and triangles and back takes for today. So we're going to actually sit around the other side. When we do, we sit down, we start to rotate both our wrists over the top of each other and start to press his wrist in towards his chest. When he goes to strip now, it's much more difficult than if I was just leaving it lazily here. You can access this quite easily. Conversely, if I start to put it over here and I extend, it's actually really difficult for him to strip. And you'll feel the difference when you do this. Once you get into that position, you're going to unweight your right leg, throw your right leg over the top, and we're going to start attacking from here. Let's give that a go. Ordinarily, what we want to prioritize is upgrading this to a 3/4 juji. Reason being is that we want to have the ability to triangle him if he starts to sit up, or armbar him if he stays down. Right now, from this position in a full juji or a regular armbar position, I don't have the ability to triangle him. I've only got the ability to attack his arm. And so this is a little bit safer for him because he's not going to run into two issues at once. Now, when you're dealing with grips, you're either going to be dealing with palm to palm, wrist to wrist, or sometimes they go figure four underneath. Yeah, exactly. Maybe they go underneath my hamstring is probably more common. Exactly right. So when you get into this situation, don't just pull at the crook of the elbow with the crook of your elbow and resist as much as humanly possible. Like I can lean to a certain degree here and I'm not really exerting too much force, but I'm not really getting anywhere either. So depending on the grip that they choose is depending on how you're going to break this grip. If he goes for the most robust grip, which is this one, maybe even sometimes it's not the most robust, it definitely stops me from breaking him some of the time if they're really strong and they're in this position. Most of the time you should be able to just pull this and then push and extract the hand. Not always will that happen, but most commonly they're going to be using something like this. And so if you could feed your foot to your chest and just to the other side of his head here, always do so. Most of the time, if they're good defensively, they'll be pulling this gap to be quite small. If you're Dave and you can break your leg off and feed it on the inside, sure, by all means do so, but not everyone can do that. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to circumvent the problem and go over the top. Once we go over the top, I'm aiming for the back of my calf to go over the wrist that I want to strip against. I don't want to go over this wrist because then I'm reinforcing the grip. I want to go over this one and put tension on that. So I place my calf over the top of his secondary hand, I lock my feet over the top, and now I can start to lean and break his grip, where he's probably going to feed his hand back into this position, but now I'm in a good spot to start to either armbar him by breaking this grip or triangle him if he turns in. Now, I don't want to have my posted hand this direction, because if he goes to sit up right now, he sits into my post and I stop him from being able to come up. I actually want to switch my arms and post out this direction so that I can bait him to not go this way, because if he goes this way now, he goes into my post. However, if he takes me back down towards his body now, I fall over, but he falls right into a triangle. So you always want to post towards the top side of the head to make sure that they're enticed to be able to go towards their legs. And now this is why we start to use 3/4 juji over full juji, is because as soon as he gets into this position, he sits up, I can start to triangle him, settle down. I can start to triangle him, or if he stays down, I can start to armbar him. When you want to finish this triangle, back up to your knees, you want to set the base of your Achilles or the base of your calf right at the side of the neck. You don't want to pretend that this is more of a front triangle and have your knee too deep. You want your ankle to start to come down towards the side of his neck here, so you get a clean shot on it, and then you're going to start to link over the top, and you actually want to drive your hips sideways into the shoulder of the arm that you have controlled. If you're not getting a finish from driving your hips across here, what you need to start to do is either take this arm and start to perform arm locks and Americanas by driving his elbow down into the bottom of the hip, and then the same hip motion for the triangle is the same hip motion for the arm lock. If that's not working, you start to come underneath for the secondary arm, go double tricep cup on this far side, and then you're going to pull your calf into his shoulder with his own shoulder. So you pull your calf into this side of the artery, you're pushing your hips into the shoulder of his right arm, and then you're pulling your shoulder across to just increase the tension in here. If he stays down, what we're going to do is we got it this way, what we're going to do is we're going to find the weak part of his grip and start to open that up where the gap is between his two hands. I don't want to pull this way into the strength of his grip because his fingers are around the front here, and that's going to make it easy for him to resist this. However, if I go on the inside and strip it apart, now I'm in a much better position to expose this arm. When I do break the grip, I want to lean down towards that same side, because if he does come up into me, he's going to get triangled again. Don't come up yet. But most of the time, you should have a pretty clean shot at taking this hand towards your top shoulder, or towards your bottom shoulder rather, and then you can start to pull up so that his shoulder comes connected to your hips as much as possible, and then you can break him over your bottom hip. So I know that's a fair bit, but it's all useful. So we've got into our original armbar position from our kimura. Depending on where his arm is and depending on what his grip is, will be dependent on how you break this grip. Usually what they're going to do is close this space down so you can't easily feed your foot on the inside. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay your calf over the top of his grip, lock your feet back heel, and then you should be able to separate the hands. Most of the time they'll realize they've been beaten and they'll re-grip over here. What I'm gonna do now is switch my arms and post on the top side towards his head. This is gonna stop him from taking me over my left shoulder, and it's gonna entice him, if he wants to sit up, to go to the right side. When he does, I simply just remove my left leg, put my triangle in over the top. If the strangle isn't working for whatever reason by me driving my hips into the side of his neck, well then I can start to look at stripping this grip, taking both my hands over the top of his fist like this, driving his elbow down towards the floor to create a wedge, and then hipping in for an arm lock finish. If that isn't working, and it should, we're gonna start to go double tricep grip over the far side. I'm gonna pull all of his shoulder into his neck here, and then if I drive my hips through, I should get a pretty strong strangle. If he stays down, we just go through the same armbar sequence, except we're stripping this grip. As we lay back, we pull everything to the bottom side, and I wanna start to break him over my bottom hip. As I start to lay back, I'm pulling his wrist up towards my bottom shoulder, and then I can break him over the bottom side. Let's give that a go. We get into our 3/4. We've got our hands on the right side, but for whatever reason, this guy doesn't want to sit up, and we cannot break his fucking grip. We've tried finding the weak part, and we're struggling to get anything going here. What we're going to do is change our mode of operation. We're going to start to heist and come up on top of him. So I'm actually going to switch my hands for this movement and switch him into a mounted triangle. Reason being is I want to post over this direction so I don't face plant, which would be highly embarrassing. So I'm going to switch my hands. I'm going to drive my right knee down towards the floor as I start to come up and place my knee on the far side of his body. And now you could go to a proper mounted triangle, or you can just simply go to another version of an ankle triangle. And that's all going to depend on how much your knee chokes up against his neck here. Ordinarily, I'd recommend that you go to a mounted triangle. There's a more robust finish if you maintain mount as well. So what you're going to do is lift everything up via his elbow. Then you're going to shorten that knee into the side of his neck. And then my left knee currently is scissoring into this side of his head, going this way to wedge that perfectly into position. I'm going to put my forehead on the mat to make my right leg unweighted so I can find the back of my own calf. And I'm going to throw my left shoelaces down his spine. Now, if I squeeze and I'm not getting a finish here, which I should, in the odd situation that I won't get a finish, maybe you didn't put your knee in the correct position, what you're going to do is you're going to start to use, sorry, Spew, this is going to be awful. You're going to start to use your same posting hand on the right-hand side to reach for a belly whizzer. This is going to cut the angle and turn so that you can increase the tension of the strangle without having to squeeze your legs to a point where you're blowing your hamstrings out. Switch around this way for me. Thank you. So, we're in our ankle triangle, and we're just finding, for whatever reason, he's really tough, he's really annoying. Even if we strip the grip, he quickly resets it. That most likely won't happen, but let's say he's just being fucking strong and annoying. I'm gonna make sure that my hand is posted down on this side again, and so I'm gonna come up, undoing my legs, driving my right knee down towards the floor so that I can come up over the top. When I get to this spot, I'm gonna lift his elbow up into position so I can get his head slightly off the floor. I'm gonna snake my right knee into the perfect spot. You should have no tension in this leg at this time, because if you do hamstring curl at this point, you're gonna create a big gap on the side of his neck, which you don't want. When I get to here, I'm gonna use my left knee to wedge him into position as I take my head down towards the floor, unweight my right leg, and then get a nice shot at the neck. Once I take my left knee back down towards the floor, I squeeze my knees together, and I get a really tight finish. If, for whatever reason, that finish isn't working, you're gonna forego the arm, post, right belly whizzer, comes over the other side of his body, and you just lean down towards his feet. And I don't have to increase the amount of tension that I'm pulling back through my heels, through my hamstring. It's a mechanical leverage, it's not a squeeze. I'm not trying to hamstring curl him to, what are you calling it? When you're unconscious, hamstring curl into unconscious territory. I'm trying to leverage my body weight so that I can get his shoulder compressed into his neck and his artery compressed on the other side from my hamstring. So think about that while you're doing it. Don't try and squeeze your hamstrings through his head. You'll end up hurting their neck and it'll be very unlikely to finish them. Get the belly whizzer, turn the angle, and then go for the finish. Let's give that a go. We can actually start to just forego all the stuff that we just did and triangle him from here using a rear triangle. What I want to do is I want to push off with my right foot here to start to get his hips turning away. And I can pull him up into my lap and then start to use that right leg coming over the other side as I bring his elbow up above his head and then I can start to link the triangle here going into ankle triangle territory. Or what I can start to do is kick his legs away and start to feed to the other side for the Ishiro Senkaku. So there's a bunch of triangles you can do from here. This is the one that we're going to focus on. I'm just giving you an option for the ankle triangle. Now, the common, oh, sorry, I put my hand in your mouth. Yuck. Jake, can you get some sanitizer or something? I don't want to get rabies. Anyway, so once we've done a good job at getting this elbow above the head, what usually is the last piece of the puzzle here is to start to take my leg across and then start to lock the triangle. But what most good people will do is they'll anticipate this, they'll put the back of their palm in the way. So when I go to try and lock this triangle, his arm creates a physical barrier and stops me from back heeling as much as I'd like to. Now, there's not much we can do to stop his arm from getting into that position, aside from hand assisting and shortening this process as much as we can. Sometimes though, he still will get his hand in the back of my calf. So what we've recognized is if I lay down onto my side here, and then I start to hand assist underneath, and then I squeeze my knees together, I should actually still be able to finish him, even if he does get his palm behind the back of my knee. If he doesn't get his palm behind the back of my knee, sure, I just go into my normal rear triangle. I try and tuck my shoelaces as tight underneath his spine as possible, so it makes that pummel really difficult, and I can just simply adduct my knees and squeeze for the finish. But in the likely case that he does start to get his hand behind my calf, I simply just reach down and hand assist. I pull everything nice and high up into the strangle, and I should still be able to get a finish by adducting my knees together. So we're in this top head and arm sort of situation. I want to wedge over his hip so I can stop him turning in towards me. If he turns in towards me, I'll just go back towards the ankle triangle series. I'll come over the top, start to break his grip and do what we did just beforehand. So I'm going to pull him up here. I'm going to start to put my left foot across the other side. Sorry, Spear. Across the other side, wedging on that far hip. And then I'm going to lay down on my side as I've pulled his elbow up above his head. If his elbow is down towards here, you're not going to get a good strangle because there's not going to be a solid enough connection with his shoulder to his artery. So make sure you're pulling it all the way up so that the shoulder can get compressed via your hips. And then if he's late to the party, no problem, just tuck your shoelaces underneath his spine and squeeze and adduct your legs. But the likelihood that he gets his hand and blocked you here is actually quite high. So what you're going to do is just reach down in front of your own ankle, start to pull everything nice and high, and you should still be able to adduct for a nice tight finish. Let's give that a go, then we'll wrestle.
No. Right. Friends once.
Right. Right.
It actually says 60 on the back.
You owe baby like $2.
She's like, no, it's not 60, it's 30.
Why do they put it at 60 then?
I don't know.